Welcome you all to the Artist Career Development Informational Webinar. And my name is Sue Legatt, and also with us is Melissa Marutis, who is our content manager. I use she, her pronouns. I have dark hair and fair skin. And Melissa, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Melissa Marutis, she, her pronouns, blonde hair, fair skin.
Thank you. If you would like to have a longer conversation to discuss your application, we do offer virtual office hours. Those are available on our homepage. All the way at the top, there's a little blue button that says Contact Us, and you can sign up for an individual one-on-one Zoom session with me to discuss what you want to do. The purpose of today's webinar is to cover the Artist Career Development Grant application and provide tips on how to make your application stand out. We're also going to go through the entire application so you can see what it looks like and discuss the review process. The goal is that you become more familiar with the application and feel more prepared to apply and have a better understanding of the review process and how to become more successful as an applicant. I do want to take a moment to thank our funders. Minnesota has a truly unique funding system, the only one like it in the United States. We receive funding from two primary sources. The first is the Minnesota State Arts Board through a legislative appropriation from both the General Fund and the Arts and Cultural Legacy Amendment. CMAB is one of 11 regional arts councils throughout the state, and as Region 7W, we serve Benton, Sherburne, Stearns, and Wright counties. We also receive funding from the McKnight Foundation, who works to support Minnesota's artists and culture bearers to advance a more just, creative, and abundant future where people and planet thrive. The Artist Career Development Grant is supported with McKnight funding. The Artist Career Development Grant, or ACD for short, is eligible to any practicing artist in Region 7W. It is a $4,000 grant and intended for individuals to pursue an activity or an item or effort that will advance their creative career to the next level. Applicants can apply for funds to support performances, exhibitions, the purchase of new equipment, creative time, publication expenses, and much more. When you first start the application, you will need to complete the eligibility section. Think of this as the beginning of your contract that you are agreeing that you are eligible to apply for this application. You will be asked to confirm that you are a self-proclaimed artist, 18 years of age or older, a resident of Minnesota for the last 6 months, a current resident of Region 7W, and a U.S. citizen, or you have attained permanent resident alien status. You will also be asked for your county and if your address has changed since you created your account. It's important that you keep up to date on all of your personal information so that when the contracts and everything are issued, they are accurate and legal. After eligibility, you're going to want to take a close look at the criteria statements. These are used to evaluate the strength or weaknesses of an application by the review panel, which we'll talk more about later. You get them as a cheat sheet for your application. If you know the criteria statements and you know how your application is going to be evaluated, you can write your application with those criteria statements in mind. There are 3 categories of criteria and criteria statements for the ACD. They are artistic merit and quality, need, and ability. Each criteria has 2 or 3 criteria statements to elaborate further and address specific items related to that criteria. For artistic merit and quality, the criteria statements are: the proposed activities will contribute to the applicant's artistic growth and/or creative career. It's important to explain why this activity or item is important to your growth beyond the fact that you will just have it and you get to produce more work. Take the time to explain the benefits of whatever it is you're asking for, the benefits beyond, and how it's going to impact you moving forward. The next statement is: the applicant's work exhibits original thought and the ability to express it creatively, as well as a dedication to development of technical skill. This statement goes directly towards the quality of your work and your ability to express an original thought through that work. It is not about the panelists liking your work. It is about how you use your art form to express your original way of thinking. If you have an aesthetic or a performing nature that is intentionally meant to be rough or um, meant to look a certain way or meant to feel a certain way that would not necessarily align with what we consider to be advanced, you will want to explain that in your artist statement, in your narrative, somewhere in there. So the panel is not confused. They don't think that you're being sloppy or careless. They know that that's an intentional action that you have taken as a creative. The third statement for this criteria category is the applicant work samples evoke emotion, intellectual inquiry, or other responses from an audience. This one's a little bit trickier because, as we know, art is subjective and everybody's going to respond to it in a different way. That is fine. The purpose of this statement is that if you have a specific intention with your work, are you accomplishing that? Is that emotion, is that reaction from the audience coming through? Under need, the first criteria statement is that the applicant has identified how the proposed activities will benefit their artistic growth and/or creative opportunities. This one may seem familiar to the previous one, but the previous one was focused on creative growth. Because this is a career development grant, this one is focused on the career side of the growth. So how are you developing creatively? How are you developing professionally? The next statement is that the proposal aligns with the applicant's long-term artistic goals. All of these statements should support your long-term goals. Panelists like to see an applicant who knows how to use this opportunity to create opportunity. Think of it like if you give a man a fish, that analogy. So we don't want to hand you a fish. We want to give you the tools or give you the financial support you need so that you can go on and continue to fish on your own, sort of. That might not be the best analogy, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Before we go on, I do want to point out that financial need is not a criteria. It doesn't work to say, I need this piece of equipment because I can't afford it right now, or something like that. So focus on the growth as opposed to the limitations that you have. For ability, the first criteria statement is the proposed activities are appropriate for the applicant's level of skill and experience. Since this statement is under the ability criterion, it is intended to address whether or not you have explained your growth and if your proposal feels like something you are capable of achieving as described. So, for example, if your work samples focus on photography, but you are asking for recording devices or sound equipment, the panel will be confused. You're going to need to explain how do you go from photography to audio. So you're going to have to explain that. And this is where we want to make sure that it's appropriate. The next statement, the applicant has outlined a timeline for implementing their proposal that is logical, detailed, and addresses challenges or barriers. Whatever you propose, you need to have a plan for completing what you are proposing. The timeline is necessary to show how long each step will take and if you've allowed yourself enough time for each step. All of our grant programs are for a 12-month period of time. And for this program, wherever you start and end would be between September 11th of 26 and September 10th of 27. So you cannot propose to get funding for something you have already done. So if you are planning to do a project and you've already purchased that equipment, you can't put it in the grant to retroactively pay yourself for something you've already purchased. All right. Budget. The second criteria statement for ability is that the budget is appropriate to the proposed actions and/or goals. The budget, always the budget. This is always the thing that trips me up because I always worry if I put in too much, are they going to think I'm being greedy? If I don't put in enough, maybe they think I won't really need this or I don't care. I recommend you put in everything. Everything that is an eligible expense, put it into the budget because, again, the budget is connected to your ability. If you don't put something in the budget, but you address it in your proposal description, the panel will see this gap, right? It's going to see that you're trying to do something, but you're also not asking for that particular thing in the budget. And so, how are you going to accomplish what you've said you're going to do when you haven't, you know what I mean? So, put everything in the budget, be honest with your budget, and always remember to include your creative time if that is something that is appropriate for what you're proposing. You are allowed to pay yourself with the grant funds. All right. We do have a new policy this year that I want to make sure everyone is aware of regarding AI. This was created over the summer and it's been added to all of our applications. The shortened version that accompanies this application. Applications with excessive AI-generated content may be deemed ineligibles. There are a lot of ways that AI can influence an application and be used in the creation of art, and those can cause issues around legality with the contract, but also copyright for creatives. We require that all applicants have copyright authority over their work. And I know I'm a visual artist. I know that to legally have copyright, you have to file it with the Library of Congress and all these other things. That's not what we're talking about. But that you can show that it comes from your original ideas and your original craftsmanship, whatever it is, whether you use digital technology or not. So excessive AI would remove that original process from the creation of the artwork. You can use AI to help you write an application, especially if English is not your first language. But be careful that there is nothing in your application that goes beyond what you are prepared to take on. So, for example, don't say that you will have an interpreter at your opening reception because AI made that sound really good, but you don't have it in your finances to hire an interpreter. You don't even know where to go to find an interpreter. So just make sure that if you are using AI to help you with your application, everything that is in there is something you are prepared and able to do because the application is the beginning of your contract. All right, so pro tip number one, like I said, use the criteria statements as a checklist. I like to print off the criteria statements and just kind of have them taped to my wall or somewhere in my workspace so that while I'm addressing the request, the information field in the application, I'm glancing over at the criteria statements and kind of going, did I miss anything? And you can flip it too, where you read the criteria statements and you see something and you're like, oh, I don't really have that. I don't know how to address that. And then just kind of percolate on it, think about it, come up with an appropriate response to address a particular criteria statement when and if it becomes appropriate in the application. Pro tip number two, explain what is not obvious and share it with others. Very often, artists may use terminology that is not mainstream, or we may reference a technical skill that not everybody knows. That's fine as long as you add the definition after it, right? So you don't want to keep talking about a technical component of your work and never address it because the panel will not know what they're looking for. They won't know if it's a sophisticated thing that demonstrates your technical abilities or if it's something everybody should know, but you're using a technical term for it. So just make sure you explain it. And then it often helps, especially in the proposal description, print it off or share it with other people before you submit it in the application, because our panelists are members of the community as well. So if you share that with others and they are confused, there's a good chance that the panel will be confused. So it's just a way to kind of catch any issues before you go ahead and submit the application. I'll just say one of my favorite things about CMAB and the way that we structure it is that the guidelines that are available on our website mirror the application. So when you're going through and looking at the guidelines before you even go into the grant system and apply, you can look at the guidelines. They're basically the application. So you can see all of that, see if it's a good fit, then go into the grant system and start your application. The application itself is pretty straightforward. When preparing your answers, always keep those criteria statements in mind. And yeah, unnecessary information may confuse the panelists. And so the best advice I can give is just answer the question. Just provide what is necessary. Be clear and make sure that your entire application will connect to it and relate. The strongest applications are the ones that are like a straightforward, nice, neat little package for a very, not necessarily singular, but where it all connects and it all makes sense. And it's just this nice little bundle that the panel can wrap their heads around. Okay, the first thing you're going to need for your application is your artist statement. Think about who you are as an artist, why you are an artist, why did you choose this particular art form? How do you make your work? Is there anything unique about the process that you'd like to point out? What is your work about conceptually? What are you addressing? Why are you choosing to address that particular thing? And then how should your work affect others? What is it that you want the audience to take away? The artist statement is so incredibly important to artists. We have actually made a video on artist statements. It's available on our YouTube channel. So if you have not looked at that, or if you're not sure about your artist statement, I strongly encourage you to spend some time working on that. And artist statements evolve as we evolve as creatives and as people. So kind of connecting and checking in with your artist statement to make sure it still represents who you are as an artist can be really important as you continue on in your career. The next thing you are going to need is a proposal description. This is where you explain what you want to do with the grant funds. What will you do? How will you do it? How will you complete it successfully? Like that's the ability part. How do you know you're able to do this? What will change if you complete it? That's the growth component. And how will this lay the groundwork for even more growth, right? We want it to snowball. We want it to go beyond just this singular moment. You're also going to need the details, the logistics of what you're doing. When will it start? When will it end? What does the timeline look like for producing or for completing what you are proposing? And then you're going to need a location of where that work is going to take place. The location could be your home studio, and you can put in multiple locations. So if you're a visual artist and you're going to be creating a new body of work for an exhibition, the body of work is created in your studio. The exhibition site would be the second location. So make sure you have all of that prepared in advance. If you are working with somebody else, you would need to include their information. This is a mentor or a collaborator. You are not required to have a mentor or collaborator situation. If you do, however, you will need to provide their name and website so that we can see, or the panel can see if it is an appropriate collaboration. And if it is a collaboration, definitely address that in the proposal description. Why are you working with this person? What do they bring in? Would you, explain how you would not be able to create such an incredibly unique thing without that person's involvement. And then finally, artistic training and experience. This is sort of like your resume, what experience you have in this particular art form that you want to do. And it will help evaluators see that you can complete the proposal successfully. If you are proposing to go into a new direction, you're going to really want to explain why you're choosing to branch and go into a new area. But also in the work samples, have one or two that demonstrate the preliminary tests, right? So example, again, you wouldn't want to have all photography and then do a statement, do an application for sound equipment because you're done with photography and now you want to be a recording artist, right? You would have to provide examples to show the panel that you have a basis to become a recording artist. And honestly, I don't even know if I would address the fact that you were formerly a photographer, right? Unless they're somehow connected and it's just the next evolution as opposed to a complete new branch, a completely new thing. One of the, oh, my computer just won't let me advance slides. One of the most important things in your application is going to be your work samples. We have seen time and time again that panelists will forgive weaker areas of an application if somebody's work samples are strong. Strong work samples does not necessarily mean that they are of the highest technical skill set. Instead, if you're a performing artist, can we hear you? If you are an actor, do we know which actor you are on stage? If you are a visual artist, have the images been lit and cropped so that we can see the details of the work? So really take the time to document your work. You want them to be high quality, and the application, whatever it allows for, submit as many of those in the high quality samples that you have. Whatever it allows, you want to include all of that. Your samples should be from the last 5 years. You don't want to put in too much very old work. And then always test them when you're in the application. Pay very close attention to the instructions for submitting so you know your file type will work. If you submit a URL link to a website, you know that when we click on it, it is going to transfer to the website, that the page isn't suddenly lost online or something. And then the next thing too is the sample description area. This is so incredibly important to further understanding your work samples as they relate to your proposal and your artist statement. You are required to submit a title, medium, year, size, those type of things, those identifiers, but you also have the opportunity to inform the panel. Take advantage of this, point out unique things, explain why you chose this particular work sample. If this is the precursor to what you're proposing to do, if this is a demonstration of your technical ability to show that you can go even further, if you are using some complicated technical component, this is the opportunity for them to go, oh, that's what that means. Wow, this person's got some skills, right? So use the work sample description beyond the requirement of title, medium, year, size. It's extremely important. Okay, and then finally, the budget. Like I said before, you're going to want to include everything and always remember to pay yourself if that is an option. If you are requesting an $8,000 worth of equipment, the budget won't allow for you to also pay yourself. But if you're able to, make sure you do that. Value your time. You are working and you are providing something to society. So that is worth valuing yourself. I almost feel like saying everybody in the room needs to say out loud, I am an artist. I deserve to be paid. I'm a visual artist. I know what it feels like. Um, the happy side note that I want to point out is in January of 2026, the federal government changed their reporting requirements. It went from $600 to $2,000 a year. $2,000 and more, you will have to report. The Artist Career Development Grant, it can go up to $4,000. So if you go above $1,999 from us in a year, you will receive a 1099. Not just for this individual grant, it covers the entire calendar year. Okay, so we're going into the application. This is what the application is going to look like when you get into the system. The first thing you're going to have is the eligibility section. You absolutely must complete this section before the system will allow you to go into the information portion of the application. So please make sure you check all the boxes, and I don't know if you could see my cursor, but under the eligibility checklist, you need to confirm all of these options. You need to provide your county, and then if you changed your address, you would click yes or no. This is the big one where we very often get people clicking like, yep, I'm 18 years of age or older, done. And then they don't know why they can't complete the application. So make sure you complete everything in the eligibility section. If you change your address, this is what it looks like. It'll pop up. If you click no, your address is not changed, you'll probably never even see this section. Then we get to the proposal description. You'll see here at the very top all of the criteria statements that we discussed. So if you wanted to, you could do a screen grab, you could print these off, whatever, and have them available for you as you're working through the application. The proposal description is going to ask for a name and then the logistical information, your start date, end date, and the timeline that you need. It's also going to have the location. If you have a collaborator, that's where this would come in. So their information and their website or whatever they may have available to provide some work samples to see that it is appropriate. Then you have the proposal description. You can submit your proposal description as either a written document or a written description or as an audio video recording. So again, if language and writing is not your strongest area, but you're a natural storyteller, go ahead and submit an audio or video recording of yourself providing your proposal description. Artist statement comes up next. The suggestions that I mentioned before are included in the application. So we try to make the application as accessible as possible, and those suggestions are very valuable to help you formulate your thoughts and address what is necessary that you need to provide in the application. After that, you'll get the work samples. There's 3 options for submitting your work samples. So whichever one of these you click, that's what you're going to be taken to, and that's what you'll see next to provide that particular work sample. There are also work sample descriptions or instructions available for you. Pay very close attention to this and make sure that you are not going over what is the maximum. If you do go over, we will instruct the panel. If you haven't provided those instructions, we will instruct the panel to just stop watching your video at the 7-minute mark. And if the thing that you really want them to see is at the 8-minute mark, you need to put in that work sample description area that you want them to watch from 3 to 10 minutes and not from 0 to 7 minutes. And then they will adjust and they will watch the area that you want. So just make sure you use that very carefully. Okay, so if you are providing image or literary work sample, the file options are a PDF or a JPEG. You have the work sample description area and you have the work sample uploads. Make sure that whatever you put in the work sample description, like if you're addressing image number 1, that should be the file name that you upload should be called image number 1 so that the panel can make a direct connection to what they're reading in the description and what they're looking at in the samples. If you are submitting a video and audio sample upload, you can do this here. I strongly recommend that if you are able to, for especially a video upload, put it onto YouTube or Vimeo or something like that, and then opt to do the URL option so that you don't have to worry about file size, because a 7-minute video may need to be condensed and then you start losing the quality. So if you want those high quality work samples, find a place to put it online and then provide the link to that. And then that's where this would come in. So this would be the website or the URL sample. You can submit multiple URLs. So you can have multiple videos. And like I said, you can say, listen to, from 1 to 2 minutes on this URL or on this sample, but on the next sample, you're going to watch from minute 3 to minute 7, right? They all add up to 7 minutes. It does not need to be 7 minutes uninterrupted of one video. So you can piece that together. Just make sure you're really careful to keep it 7 minutes and under because otherwise the panel won't see all of it. And then the budget area. So the budget area is a table. On the left-hand column is where you will put in the item or the expense that you have, as well as information about it. So for example, if you are going to do creative time, behind that, you could just write creative time, and then in parentheses, you can say, $40 an hour times 10 hours. And then the total amount of that expense line is on the right-hand column. So that's where you would put the $400 for your creative time. There's quite a few fields in here. If you run out of space, you may want to consider categorizing your expenses. So if you are, let's say, a painter, you don't necessarily need to put in paint, brushes, paper, miscellaneous like water cups or things like that. You can simply put in supplies and then what that is. So you have your time, you have your supplies, maybe there's other expenses, but if you run out of space, consider categorizing as opposed to itemizing. At the bottom, it's going to ask you for your total proposal expense. This is the entire budget amount. After that, it has the additional expenses. These are things that the grant cannot cover. So if you are going to have alcohol at your opening reception or at your performance or whatever it is, you could put that in here if you feel it's important to the proposal. Below that is the amount requested. So the amount requested cannot exceed $4,000. The first one is your total budget. The second one is the amount requested. I do want to add additional expenses can also apply to important things that were purchased for the proposal prior to receiving the grant. So I'm a photographer. Let's say I purchased a printer and now I'm asking to do a project using that printer. I can say that I've already purchased this printer. It is not part of my grant application, but it shows that I have this possession already. So it makes sense, like, how is she going to complete this project if she doesn't have that particular printer? So you can address that in the budget, but it's nicer to do that in the narrative and keep the budget nice and clean. The last part of the application is data collection. This really helps us go back to our funders and let them know what the situation, what things look like in our community. And it also helps us see how we are reaching the community, who is actually coming in to submit an application. Yeah, so do your best when you're going through this. How did you learn about the program? What is your primary discipline? The demographic information. So ethnicity, distinct groups, and then additional information. Sometimes additional information can be addressed in the artist statement if that identifier is appropriate and directly tied to the work that you're creating. You do not have to put those identifiers in your artist statement if it's not relevant to your work. You also don't need to introduce those additional that information or those identifiers in the additional information if you don't want to. But try to fill out the data area as best you can. After data, we have certification. This is where you sign it and you're saying that I agree and I confirm that everything I've put into the application is accurate to the best of my ability in describing it. This is where the contract really begins. This is what's going to be taken. If you are funded, you will receive an actual contract that you have to fill out, that you are receiving grant funds, that you accept that responsibility, and you are going to use them for what you have put into the application. So this area is just saying that everything I've put in the application is accurate. And then the last part, this is an option. If you are new to applying for applications, this is fantastic that it is offered. It is the application draft review. Before you hit the submit button, you can come in here and you can ask our staff to go through your application and review it. We go into the system and we will make comments under all of the areas on things that you did really well, things that could use a little bit more support. If something doesn't make sense, we may suggest that you want to spend a little bit more time explaining that. If the budget doesn't add up or something maybe is missing, we may point that out. So this is a way to get people in the know or whatever to look at your application and help you make it even stronger before you submit and it goes to panel. So if you're new to this application, if you're new to grant applications in general, please request a draft review so that we can provide that feedback for you. So, pro tip, use the videos on our YouTube channel. We have 3 that I think are really helpful. The work sample video, we have top 10 tips for grant writing, and we have an artist statement video. And now we're going to take a break for questions.
We did have one good question in the chat I thought should be shared. It was asked if there is a lifetime limit amount. And no, you can apply for the Artist Career Development Grant every year, once a year.
Yes, and you can also be a recipient of the Artist Career Development Grant and apply for the Artist Learning Grant and apply for the Individual Artist Award and receive all of them all in the same year. You cannot receive multiple grants for the exact same thing. So let's say, for example, you are an author and you receive the ACD award to write a book. And then you apply to the Artist Learning Grant because you got your book published, it's amazing, and now they want to turn it into a screenplay. They want to make a movie out of it. But you don't want to hand over those rights. You want to write your own screenplay. You don't know how. So you apply for the Artist Learning Grant to take a workshop on screenplay writing, right? So now you've written your screenplay, your book has been published, and you submit for the Individual Artist Award because look at all that you've accomplished. This is a benchmark moment in your life, and you want to celebrate that. We are going to take a little bit of time and go through the review process. I think that understanding the review process can be very helpful in preparing your application. And I also want to point out that for some of our grant programs, we have public panels, people from the community who volunteer to serve on our panels. And it is like being thrown into the deep end of the pool, but it is such a great way to learn about the application process, what makes a strong application, where does the panel disagree or where does the panel get confused? It can really help you become a better grant writer. So the overall process is that an applicant will submit their applications, ask questions to CMAB staff, you submit, and then you moves forward. You've been reviewed, eligibility has been confirmed, work samples have been tested, everything's good to go. Now it gets assigned to the panels. The panelists go through an orientation to train them up, become familiar with the application, and then they do their preliminary reviews and scores on their own time. The panelists are required to connect their feedback to those criteria statements. So if they see something in an application that is raising a little red flag for them, but it is not a criteria statement, they cannot connect it, they have to disregard that. So again, those criteria statements are the cheat sheet, right? If you know that you're addressing those criteria statements, the panel is also going to be using those criteria statements to evaluate. After they've evaluated all of their applications on their own time, we come together as a group. The whole panel will sit down on Zoom and we go through each application and we discuss what the feedback was from the panel, whether people agree, disagree, if there was confusion. Each panelist then gives their final scores and their final feedback. All of those scores are calibrated, averaged together, giving the application a final average score. The applications then are ranked from highest score, highest percentage down to the lowest, and we fund from top to bottom until the funding runs out. The panel's recommendation then is given to the board. The board will vote to approve or shift things around a little bit based on what the panel scored, but also what the staff recommends. This happens if there is a tie. So if application number 11 and 12 are the exact same score or very, very close to each other, if funding would have normally run out at application 11, the board can choose to either reduce funding so that 11 and 12 are not competing, but neither gets funded, or increase funding so both 11 and 12 get funded. If your application is funded, you will receive notification by email. Actually, you receive that either way, if your application was funded or not funded. If it was funded, you will receive a contract. If it was not funded, you will receive the option to request your feedback. I recommend you request your feedback always, whether you were funded or not. Sometimes, I think that's my next pro tip, always request your feedback. Sometimes you get funded, but there's still incredibly valuable feedback that can help you become even stronger because maybe you were funded just like this much. So always request your feedback, always take a look at it. And again, the way that we do our panels is really nice because the feedback has to connect to those criteria statements. And that's it. That's what I've got. Yes, please watch those additional videos. Please reach out to us if you have questions. Our emails and phone number are provided below. And also keep in mind that you have the option of those virtual office hours so you can meet one-on-one and get additional assistance.